In this video, I really want to talk about walking baits, topwater spook style baits like the ones that you see me holding right here. These are absolutely one of the most dominant lures to use in the middle of summer for bass, but not only that, these things catch fish across the world. I mean, people fish them in the salt water, in Europe, they fish them down in the Amazon. Like, these are a phenomenal bait for fish species of all different kinds. Now, in this video, I want to talk about 3 big tips that I've learned about these baits over the years, things that help me to catch a lot more bass on them. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. And right now over at Fin Fishing, for just over 24 more hours, there is a sun shirt sale happening. All of the USA made sun shirts, again, one of the only ones made here in the US, are currently on sale. It's an automatic discount. There's no code necessary, but they're all on sale right now for just a little bit longer. So if you guys would like to help support this channel, one of the best ways to do so is shopping over at Fin Fishing. Not only do I have sun shirts, but I have shorts, hats, all kinds of different products, sun gloves, everything. So I will leave some links down below in the description. All right, let's talk a little bit about these baits. Like I said, I've been fishing these things ever since I can remember. You know, literally since I started really kind of bass fishing, I have been fishing these baits. So over 20 some years now. And there's a few small things that I've noticed when it comes to these baits that not everyone always picks up on. Now, there are definitely anglers that know about these things, but there's just a few small things that I thought that I think are really, really important when it comes to using these baits. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about, this is probably one of the more well-known things out there, is that feathers matter. Feathers matter. As you can see, I have a spook in this hand that does not have a feather on it, and I have a spook in this hand that does have a feather on it. And I'm not saying that feathers matters as in you always need to fish a bait with a feather. What I'm saying is that there are days out there where bass truly prefer one over another. Now, like I always say, there's an 80-20 rule in bass fishing. And I think that about 80% of the time that you're out there fishing, you could catch bass on one without a feather and with a feather just as good as one another. But there are those days out there where the bass just get highly specific on whether or not your bait has a feather. And I know that that might sound insane, but I've seen it way too many times out there on the water to think it's just a random thing. And so I can't give you a certain circumstance though. I can't say, hey, if you see this, throw a bait that has a feather, or if you see this, throw a bait that doesn't have a feather. The only thing that I have noticed is that when you get into later in the summertime, you will see that a lot of young of the year bait fish are around, those little tiny shad. And when it seems like you have a lot of those little tiny shad in your lake, it does seem like the bass prefer one that has a feather, but it's not an always thing. The biggest thing that I recommend is that if you're out there and you're getting on a spook bite, try to somewhat go back and forth between a bait that has a feather or one that doesn't. Or if you just only have one rod and you're casting that rod and you're catching some fish on it, if you notice that you're starting to lose fish or you're starting to miss fish, as in the fish are coming up and hitting that bait and missing it, do whatever is the opposite of the bait that you're throwing. If you're throwing a bait that does have a feather on it, start throwing one without one. If you have one or throwing a bait that doesn't have one, throw one that has one. Just keep experimenting, because it truly, I've seen it a lot of times out there on the water where it seems like bass prefer one or another. And so always keep in mind, feathers are very, very important with your baits. Now, the next thing that I really want to talk about is how you go about working this bait. 98% of the anglers that fish a topwater spook style bait do the exact same thing with them. They cast those baits out there and they literally just continuously walk that thing across the water, and it's going back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, like all the way from when it hits the water to the back of the boat. Like that is the way that 98% of the way that people catch fish on them. And the thing is that you will go out there a lot of days and you will catch fish on that exact retrieve, back and forth, back and forth. But again, kind of like that whole 80-20 rule, there are days out there, and I've seen a couple of them, that it was extremely important to either pause this bait or have a couple of really quick twitches in it. So instead of just walking it all the way back to the boat in a very like monotonous cadence, what I like to do every now and then is just stop the bait. Just completely stop it, let it rest for a second, and then start my retrieve again. Sometimes that alone, you will get twice as many bites over the course of a day. The other thing that I also like to do is as I'm walking it, what I will do is I will speed it up all of a sudden. So what I imagine in my mind is that there's a fish that is getting ready to hit that bait. He's following it. And when you speed it up, all of a sudden you bam, 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 bam it just causes a reaction strike to the bass. That bass thinks that a bait fish is getting away from him. And so he has to go up there and absolutely compow it. I have seen multiple days out there on the water where those little things, stopping that bait and speeding it up, or a combination of both of those, where you stop it and then speed it up and then normal cadence. I have seen so many days out there where that can mean the difference between actually catching fish on these baits and either getting a lot of blowups that miss it, or just you never know. Like you get followers. So that is something that I do every time that I go out there fishing a walking bait. I'm not just gonna cast it out and walk it back all the time. I always add in something to break up the rhythm of that bait coming back. I'm telling you, that can get you a lot more bites, even more than you may be thinking. And I really believe that that gets a little bit more, that works a little bit better the later into summer we get. You know, if you kind of start fishing this bait, you know, late spring, early summer, where the fish haven't seen as many of them, sure, they're gonna come up there and grab it no matter how you work it. But later in the summer, when they have seen a lot of these baits, that's a big deal to me, is speeding it up and pausing it. And it's so simple to do, but yet we're not always intentional about it. Now, the last thing that I really want to talk about, the third tip, this is something that you guys have heard me talk about with a number of different baits, but whenever you are out there fishing, always have two baits of two different kinds. As you can see, these spooks are pretty different, are pretty similar, like same shape and size. From the bottom, they're both kind of that whitish color. I don't think that a bass is gonna notice a huge difference. They both have a feather on them, as a matter of fact. But if you listen to these baits, hear all the rattles in that bait, almost nothing in that bait right there. Bass will get on one of these a lot. One of these over another. I've seen it a lot more with the silent one here recently. Again, it's a pressure thing. When you get out there on the water, it seems like there are days where they will not hit a bait that has a lot of rattles, and they will clobber a bait that is just very silent coming through the water, especially on clear bodies of water. Now, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, there are days where you want a lot of rattles, especially when you're fishing some lakes that you are having to draw the fish up out of deeper water. Like, and when I say deeper, it might be 9 foot of water, 10 foot of water, 12 foot of water. Sometimes having a bait that has a lot of rattles. Let me pick up this one, because this one sounds crazy to me. Like tons of rattles in some of these baits. That can also be a huge difference in getting bites and not, is having a lot of rattles. So anytime I'm out there and I have a spook bite, I know that it might sound like a little bit overwhelming, but I always like to experiment. Experiment with feathers, experiment with the sound, experiment with your cadence, figuring out exactly what the bass will like. You will go from catching a few fish on an outing to maybe catching a lot of fish and some really big fish. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did it, give it a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to check out that fin fishing gear. I will see you tomorrow.